Good afternoon, people. It's time for Deep Dive. As you've been waiting for us every Friday, here we are. And I am joined by my partner in crime, Sid, and with Mbugua here. Guys, say hello to the viewers.
Hello, world.
Hello, world.
So today we have very interesting stories for you, seeing how this is the last Friday we're going to be here until next year after the holidays. We would just like to start with something that has been trending and everybody has been wondering what's going to happen. The FTC wants to break up Facebook into 3 different pieces. Now, you probably might remember that they tried to do this with Microsoft and it didn't succeed. And when they were doing it, they tried to do this with Microsoft and it didn't succeed. Instead, what happened is that time went by and they talked about breaking Microsoft into 3. Nothing happened. So this is the same case that has been brought forward against Facebook. They want to separate Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook and make them different entities. So I'm wondering, is this really a possibility? Is this going to happen? Do you think that this is a thing that can actually happen? What do you think, Sid?
First of all, I know I've said this before, and I absolutely love the Facebook stories. They're always so full of great content. So, no, I don't think it's possible because I've also seen Facebook has taken measures to actually integrate their apps very closely together. So it's like you cannot space them out whatsoever. They work intrinsically well together, and so Instagram cannot operate at a higher level without Facebook. So it's like, I understand what the regulator is trying to do, and as you mentioned with Microsoft, they actually tried to do that with Google as well recently, but no, I don't think it can work.
What do you think, Mugo? Is there something wrong with the monopoly, really?
I'll insist, monopoly is only bad when you're not the monopoly, right? And unfortunately, juggernauts like Microsoft, Facebook, Google, all of them are like heights. You try chop off a hedge where there was 1, 10 come up. So this is what a lot of these regulators are failing to realize, that seeing the wrong agenda, saying that you want to split these companies or separate them. Individually, they're already great businesses in the sense that they're able to curate data across the entire world in a way that governments are afraid of. And people have joked and said these are republics unto themselves. Like if you looked at the Republic of Facebook, it would be maybe the second largest country, and some of them are trying to get into crypto and movement with Calibra and the Libra ecosystem. I mean, it's I think that they're chasing the wrong agenda, really. Right. They should look at a different way of doing it and not splitting them up. Otherwise, we're just going to create 5, 6, 7 more big companies that I think will become more difficult to work with.
Yeah. I actually think that if they split them up, like if they did, I don't know if they can do that with Instagram and with what, that would be very tricky. But I think that the idea is so that they can allow other groups to flourish, other competitors. In fact, who are Facebook's competitors? Google, Amazon, Twitter, LinkedIn, WeChat, Amazon, they're already mighty.
Yeah, yes and no. I think depending on what generation you are, Generation Z, and I don't know if the Z is going to be Z plus or something, but they're already, the likes of Facebook are already losing customers or platforms for that generation of users. So I don't think that should be a policy thing to correct. The markets will correct that by themselves. Look at MySpace. MySpace thought themselves invincible. Friendster, all these guys, everyone who's been there before thought that it's our time, we're going to flourish, and if they don't keep innovating, someone's going to come and eat their cheese. And, so let the regulator do something different. The markets will sort out all these other shenanigans.
Completely.
Ali, are you there? Hello, Ali. Okay, it looks like we've lost Ali.
Hello, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're very...
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes. You can hear us.
So my text basically is, I can hear you. My text is to Sid's point, can they be broken up or not? I don't think it's the issue of whether they can work together or not. I think it's an issue of what in economics is known as market failure. But let's step. I think the problem is policymakers and regulators are taking the easy way out here. Don't wait until these come so big and unwieldy. Sure that they don't get to a point where they are starting to abuse their market power. So instead of starting to talk about breaking up Google, breaking up Facebook, breaking up Microsoft, breaking up Safaricom locally, as we are hearing some people talk about, the issue is simple. But discourage this behavior. Let me make some suggestions. For example, stop the acquisitions that create unholy moats around companies. For example, the acquisition of Instagram to Facebook. You are creating a super social media platform that makes everybody else not able to do anything, in that space.
Exactly.
So stop those kind of things. That's number one. Number two, these tech companies have created what is now known as kill zones. These kill zones have been created by big tech in such a way that any startup that is coming up that is potentially starting to throw bad practices, they kill it by denying. For example, AWS owns Amazon Web Services. Amazon owns Amazon Services. Google owns Azure. Microsoft owns Azure. Google owns their
GCP.
Google Cloud. They can basically make life hard for you. Fire, rather, you can create a situation where you fine or you ban executives who are misbehaving in the industry. But it's got to be so punitive that they don't misbehave like that. Number four, initiatives to limit what is now known as market failure. State captures. Major organizations spend millions of dollars in lobbying governments and regulators and lawmakers to enact policies and laws that are not detrimental to their practices. Carol, back to you.
All right. So you don't think that it would make sense to just wait it out, because monopolies don't last anyway. They take some time and then they thrive and then they
Carol, the problem with the situation now and the situation then is today's the huge technology companies today have created such traction and such humongous watches when it comes to
it's
money.
like a mega structure. Yeah.
That's the kill zone I'm talking about. So any startup that remember in Microsoft, trust me, would not have Facebook, would not have Amazon, we would not have Google today. Remember what Microsoft did to Netscape. At one point, Netscape had 90% of the Explorer business. And it was the nascent time of the internet, late 90s. They killed Netscape by offering Internet Explorer for free. Netscape woke up one morning and they did not have business.
Ouch.
Their whole business was being given out for free. And yet Microsoft could afford to give it out for free because they bundled it within their Windows operating system.
Okay, fair enough. That they're going to approach 3 regulators with 3 different products, which is a unit trust, insurance, and savings. Now, there was a time when unit trusts were really hot, right when Kengen had just gone on, had gotten their IPO. And this seems like low-hanging fruit, going into low-penetration insurance and getting a savings culture because we already created an M-Pesa culture. But I'm wondering, what do you think it would be to this agenda that Safaricom have for M-Pesa? What do you think, Mbugua?
First is to say that every business is a distribution business, regardless of what you do. Whether you sell potatoes, airtime, voice, internet, you're a distribution business. So the only logical thing for a company like Safaricom to do, once they've hit a plateau on certain things, and we've seen that in the past report, voice is plateauing, but something like data is growing, you say, how else do we, since we've got distribution, a very almost zero cost to reach a consumer, what else can we lay on top? Then, of course, you'd look at areas that have the highest potential for growth. Penetration for insurance in Kenya is, I think, if you combine vehicles, we're at 3%.
Yeah.
3%. Yet there are so many interventions that require the business or the product that is insurance. So it is a no-brainer that would be an easy way to go to grow your numbers. That said, it depends on the hat they wear. It started on the telco side where they got a universal to then not only offer SMS, voice, now moving on to data, now to content. They might as well as, what they've actually done very well is partner. They already have some insurance products that are doing fantastically well, MTBA. It carries their green color, but doesn't scream Safaricom. It's MTBA, but on the ground it's really gaining traction. So they might actually not face that much kind of like resistance, because one, here's a regulator who's saying, UP, it is always sold. You will die, get life. You will get sick, get covered. I mean, the very fact that we've sat on these seats, someone would have told us, just buy insurance, you might fall on that. So the thing is that once a trusted brand like Safaricom and M-Pesa come into the play, people might feel that, let me try this out. And once you get into a culture of insurance, I think it will raise the collective insurance for everyone.
Well, Ali, what do you think? Is Safaricom a media house? Is it a tech company? Is it a fintech? Is it a bank? What exactly is it at this point in time? What is it becoming and what is it now?
So Safaricom is a new conglomerate, all sorts of businesses. Example of Safaricom, you could possibly equate it with where Amazon is at today. That's what Safaricom is attempting. Just a few days ago, I was discussing this with a friend, and I was asking, so who regulates Safaricom? Is it the Insurance Regulatory Authority? Is it Communications Authority? Is it Central Bank of Kenya? Is it commercial? Is it the CMA? The point of the matter is that Safaricom needs to grow. But I think also one of the biggest issues that I keep on saying about Safaricom, to start hearing the CEO of Safaricom and the senior management of Africa. If they start to talk Africa, the focus becomes on growth across Africa, not just Kenya. This Kenyan market is too small for the brand that Safaricom has become. M-Pesa alone today is the largest payment service provider in Africa. And yet they're hardly anywhere else in Kenya, in Africa, apart from Kenya. So in as long as they continue to talk just Kenya, Safaricom is a monster. Safaricom, in the scheme of things, is not even a rounding error in the balance. So we need to refocus this conversation around Safaricom to beyond Kenya. And as long as we continue talking Kenya, people will continue to say, oh, Safaricom is big. It's big where? Big in whose mind? Go to the big blue ocean.
Well, they're actually partnering with Alipay of that on Safaricom when you're looking at it on a large scale. Because if they're partnering with Alipay, then it means they've also figured out that they need to step out.
I actually think that might be a not so great move. Ali, I was commenting about, there's this other company called MFS that has just signed something with PayPal's Zoom. And, MFS is dominating now inter-Africa transfers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to say we're in partnership with Alipay, yet there's another silent player that's literally powering every other remittance, every other cross-border guy, and they're just really quiet. It's MFS. As soon as you discover MFS who says, "Dear Safaricom, remittance traffic, I want to put it into Kenya through M-Pesa into the wallets." I mean, I think that's what Ali is alluding to and saying. If they looked at it from that perspective, it's great that Sito and team are looking at M-Pesa Africa.
I always have thoughts. Okay, so I especially like what Mr. Ali said about the shark in the pond. But I think at this stage, they're probably like a whole whale in a pond. And just going back to what he said about the conglomerate aspect, I think it's really spot on because such a foothold in this market that it's too comfortable for them. And they do need to grow. And I think out there is where they belong rather than in a market in which they've quite literally owned for a long time now.
All right. Well, we'll be right back. We just go somewhere else and swim with the sharks. Let us know. Meanwhile, let's take a break. And there's this new app that's called Malipo that wants to streamline SACCO offerings, and it intends to monitor financial transactions, bring in transparency in SACCO's systems and processes, and they're looking more, interesting and to enable it and to make people who are to get into place. So because they're looking at growing and getting bigger.
I'll take a stab at that. I think the SACCO space is one that has defied logic in ways. One, if you look at the assets that the entire SACCO sector controls, it's humongous. But the question to ask, as Carol has paid, I need to know, make it easier for someone to take a loan. But when you look at some of the, let me call them offline sort of solutions. I remember there was one that the Honorable Rachel Ruto was running with called Joiwo. And that was simple table banking, where you've got hundreds and thousands of women organized in groups, meeting over the weekend and saying, here's my 200 shillings, here's my 500 shillings. Oh, today it's Carol who's taking the pot. It's recorded on a piece of paper, works efficiently, works at scale. I just asked myself, are we still having solutions looking for a problem? Or are we really doing it in the right way? Is a less techie to go or not? Because it's one thing to be able, but what's the other layer of services? The other layer of services is loans, the ability to offer a lot more value as opposed to just being able to collect money. A huge space. And there are really no winners yet. Even looking at the traditional sector and saying, yes, SACCOs, those who are, when they show you their numbers, they're pretty impressive. But I don't think there's a clear leader yet, whether in the traditional.
An app like Malipo playing when it comes to the SACCO space? And also, is it going to be compatible with DigiSACCOs as a trend?
Look, I completely support my brother Mbugwa on this. And to just add that this digitization of SACCOs, microfinance institutions, is very early days. I would say that they're behind banks, say maybe 10 years.
A decade.
Or so. What I think is that a lot of digitalization within the sector, Kenyans still pour a lot of money into SACCOs and microfinance institutions every year. I think last year the number was 766 billion shillings. That's $7.6 billion. The fact of the matter is that the system is not feeding into itself. That money comes, it then moves directly. The banking sector makes the most money out of it. The SACCO is left as a catchment area into the banking sector. This needs to change. It needs to change, and it needs to change yesterday. So initiatives like these are fantastic about circles is not that they don't want to embrace technology, but it's a governance issue. And members need to tackle this governance conversation. And happy to talk about this in another, in another forum, because this is mostly a tech conversation. Mostly when you look at organizations or industries that are behind when it comes to technology, the people are usually the problem. Thanks, Carol.
All right. Sid, are you in a circle? And what do you think about Malipo? Is it an app that you would use?
I'm not in a circle, but I think it's a brilliant app because it's brought around a really high level of transparency, which is important in these times, especially considering that things are all moving online. So I like the fact that innovation has struck again. And as Mr. Ali said, to reiterate what he said, that
Imagine that you've posted something on WhatsApp or it's on email, and a few days later the government approaches you and it tells you that this is a breach of national security. So can you show us what content you have on your WhatsApp, or we fine you for 1 million shillings, or you go to jail for a year? This is actually a reality that's going to happen very soon, much sooner than we think. Privacy. What do you think, Sid? Yeah.
Yeah, that's something. I think the sweet spot is constantly changing because every other day there is a new way in which a regulator is trying to obtain information through means that are previously thought of were private. So it's like that sweet spot is just like a silver lining. It really depends on who you ask and where you ask. But I feel like that sweet spot it's like a unicorn, you know? You know it exists, but it's very rare. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm wondering, see, Kenya has been flagged sometime just last week, and last year it was flagged as being a money laundering hotspot. So isn't the government justified in actually monitoring our conversations? Do you think that this is actually something that they're authorized to do? And is this ethical?
I laugh at the idea of it, because first, I consider myself and my thoughts. Would you want to know what I'm talking about and things like that? But I think the crux of what they're looking at is to say, not that you're the one who's generated it, but they're actually pointing the thing, or they're moving that sort of the long arm of the law wider to say that if in a group together, and then I post something, whether it is who's the guy who whistle blew? Snowden.
Yes.
So I'm the Snowden, and I'm in Arthi House, and I see something happening, and I snap it, and then I send it to our group. What they're really saying is that, Sid, if you don't tell us that Mbugua posted this thing, be in deep state.
Hey,
yes. Yeah. So they're putting the onus. Security starts with you.
Yeah.
So when they do that, they're essentially saying that, you know what? If you don't report, then you take the flag for it. So people start saying, don't send me forwards. I don't want to be in a group that discusses anything political. Right now, some of the largest groups on Facebook discuss politics. If someone posts something there and you don't report it and say, dear DCI, this is why I actually saw this thing, you're going to be in trouble. So I think it's more gagging us, whereas we should be encouraging free speech, because that would eventually still get the word out there.
True.
Okay, Ali, what do you think about our position in this? Do we have enough legislature to actually confront this kind of technology and this space between security and privacy? Hello? Do you want me to repeat the question? Hello? Would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I've lost you.
Hello? We can actually hear you. Can you hear me?
Someone's reported this.
Let's give you one last chance, Ali. Are you there? Oh, I guess we've lost Ali. It would have been quite interesting to hear what you would have to say on this. So, you're back, Ali? Can you hear us? Well,